What is happening, guys? It's Modded Warfare here. Welcome back to another PS5 tutorial. So in this tutorial, I'm going to be showing you guys what you can do with FTP on your PS5 by having access to the root of the file system of the PS5 using Slayer Scorvy's exploit, his exploit chain with the Blu-ray disc and a FTP payload by Zekoshal. So we're going to take a look at that here in this video. I'm going to show you all the things I've found so far and how you can kind of manipulate the files on the hard drive and customize your PS5 in various different ways. A lot of stuff is very similar to what we can do with the PS4 with FTP on jailbroken PS4s. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at that here in this video. So this current version, you need to be on firmware 4.03 for. So you can go to settings, you can go down to system, and then you can go to system, software, and console information. And you can see after the dash, we've got 04.03. So that's firmware 4.03. So this exploit will eventually work, I presume, for 4.50, so 04.50 and 04.51 at some point, but I believe the current implementation is just for 4.03, but I'll update the links in the description if we get a version that works on those higher firmwares. I mean, you can definitely try this on 4.50 and 4.51 as well, because it might work, but it will definitely work on 4.03, but your mileage may vary on 4.50 and 4.51. If you're on a higher firmware than that, you're not going to be able to do this. And if you're on a lower firmware than 4.03, then you're not going to be able to do this either. You could update to 4.03, but I wouldn't recommend it right now. You're better off staying on a lower firmware until a jailbreak comes out. But if you're already on 4.03 or 4.50 or 4.51, then you can definitely give this a try. So I also recommend going to System Software Update and Settings and disabling download update files automatically and install update files automatically. Turn those off so you don't accidentally install the latest firmware when you connect to the internet. And that is the other thing you're going to need to do as well, is make sure you are connected to the internet so that we can connect on our local network through FTP. So what you need to do is download the BDJ PS5 payload ISO by Slayer Scorvy. So download that. You're also going to need ImageBurn. So just download, Mirror 7 from ImageBurn to download the latest version. And then you're also going to need an FTP client. You can use whichever one you like to use. I personally like to use FileZilla. So I'll leave that one in the description. So then all we do is we run ImageBurn. We put in a Blu-ray disc, a blank Blu-ray disc or a rewritable Blu-ray disc. And then we go to write image file to disk. We drag the ISO into ImageBurn. You've got your disk in there, and then you click the button to write the image file to the disk. And then you just click yes, and you wait for this to finish. So once it's done, we can go ahead and eject the disk and put it into our PS5. Now, in order to inject the payload, you'll need a payload injector like Netcat GUI or any other payload injector, like one of the PS4 payload injectors will work just fine for this. So I'm going to use Netcat GUI. So I'm going to double click it, enter the IP address of your PS5 here in this box, and then change the port number to 9019. And then also you're going to need to download the payload for the FTP server, which again will also be linked in the description. And you're just going to drag that into the payload file path. And then you're basically ready to send the FTP payload to the PS5. So we'll switch back over to the PS5 right here and run the exploit by running the disk player in the media section to run our Blu-ray disc. Now you'll know if it ran successfully because at the end it will say that it's waiting for a payload on 9019. If you don't get that message, then it means it's failed and you'll have to reboot and try again. When you try to reboot, the console will probably crash, in which case you have to hit the power button twice to turn it back on, and then just load the disk again and keep doing that until it eventually loads successfully. It can take a few tries. Okay, there we go. So that's what I'm talking about right there. It says waiting for payload, enjoy kernel read write, and payload server running on port 9019. If you get that message, it loaded successfully. It actually takes over 2 minutes to load if it's loading successfully. If you get the blue screen too early, then it's probably failed. Whereas if it takes about 2 minutes or longer for it to get to the blue screen, that usually means you're okay. So yeah, we have it loaded here successfully. So now if we switch back over to the computer and inject the payload, so all we're going to do here is click this button to inject payload. And when I click that button, you can see on the PS4 itself, it does come up with PS4 listening on with the IP address and port number ported by Zekoshal and Sistro. So credit to those guys for getting this up and running. So, okay, so now we just need to run the FTP client like FileZilla. or whichever one you're using. We're going to punch in the IP address to the PS5, which is of course the same IP address that popped up in that notification on the PS5, as well as the port number, which is 1337. There's no need for a username or password. So we can then hit quick connect. And as you can see here, it loads up the root directory on the PS5. So we have access to pretty much all of the files here on the PS5 itself. Okay, so I found a few interesting things here that you can access with FTP and some customization that you can do. Okay, so firstly, if you have a system update that's pending, that's waiting to install, then you can go into the update folder here and you should find the update file. It should be called PS5 update.pup potentially, in which case you can just select it and delete it from FTP, and then that should get rid of it for you. You can potentially block system updates as well, but only temporarily by creating a directory in here with the same name as the actual update itself. So you can type in PS5 update.pup, and then you create another folder called PS5 update.pup, and then .net.temp in lowercase. And that's only temporary though, because when you restart the PS5, these folders will be deleted. But while you're still running the PS5, after you create these folders, it should stop updates from being downloaded and installed. Although I wouldn't, I'd take that with a grain of salt. That's just going by how it works on PS4. So the next thing is your package files for your game, your actual game apps. You'll find them in the user folder and then in the app folder. So you can see I've got CUSA01127. This is PT. So you can see there's the package file for PT. PPSA is a PS5 game. CUSA is a PS4 game. So PPSA 01474, that's Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart. So there's the PS5 package for Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart. I could, copy that over to the computer. It would probably take a while, but, you can copy the package file there. So that's where you can go to access your game packages. The game icons can be accessed in the app meta folder. So in here, you've got the icons here. So for example, the icon 0 will be the icon that you see on the app on the PS5. So if we copy that out, you can see it right there, icon0.png. That is indeed the icon that you see on the home screen. And then also the background you see on the home screen as well. That's pic0. I think these icons are for like maybe different sizes, but you've got pic0.png, which should be the background image, which you also see on the home screen in the background. So you can access that right there. You could swap it out, replace it for a different image if you wanted to. That's totally possible. So yeah, you can swap stuff out there. Another thing you can edit, and this is something that I showed off on Twitter, is that you can edit your trophies. You can't edit your actual trophies that you've earned, but you can edit your trophy summary, which kind of calculates all the trophies that you have on the PS5. On the PS4, it reset every time you rebooted the system, but since I changed it, it stays on the PS5, so it doesn't seem to disappear after a reboot like it does on the PS4. So you just have to set it once, so you can kind of mod your perceived trophies to as many as you want. So basically the way that you do that is you head into the user folder, which we're already in, and then we go to the home folder, which is right here. And then we go to this folder here. Now, these folders represent your profiles. So I only have one profile on the PS5, so I only have one of these folders. But, if you have multiple profiles, you'll have multiple of these folders that represent a different profile. So we're going to go into this one here, and then we're going to go to trophy, data, SCE_trope, TROP, and then you've got trophy summary.dat. So you can copy that out to your computer, and then you can just edit that in a notepad document, and then you can just edit how many trophies. So I set mine to 1337, but we can set it to say 99999. This might be a bit much, but let's give it a try. So we'll set all of our trophies here to 99999999, save it, and then we can drag this back over and click OK. Files transferred. So if we head back onto the PS5 itself, you don't want to exit the disc player, but we can minimize the disc player. So we can hit the PS button and then head to home, and it shouldn't crash because, it's still running in the background. The FTP server will not work when you exit out of the disc player though. So you'll have to go back into it to continue using FTP, but we can exit out here to see if our changes have been applied. So I can go to my profile, and you can see there the trophies are showing up as 99999 for platinum, gold, silver, bronze. So there you go, you can kind of change that, and that seems to stick even after a reboot, which is pretty interesting. Although I suspect every time you run an app, so every time you run a game or you earn a trophy in a game, it will update that trophy summary and it will refresh it back to normal. So it's not something that I think is going to stick permanently, but still a little interesting thing that you can do. So let's head back here into the disk player so that we can continue using FTP. Save data is in the same location as you can see here. So inside user, home, and then your profile folder, you've got save data. Right now I only have the profile for Days Gone on here, but that's where you'll find your save files. Obviously these folders represent the game, and you go in there and you'll find your save files. But these are encrypted save files, not the decrypted version. But you can access your save files there if you want to back them up, for example. So next we've got game updates. So game updates can be found again in the user folder, in the patch folder. I don't have any game updates installed right now, so they're not showing. You can also change your avatar, your actual profile picture, and it's exactly the same way you do it on the PS4. So for example, you just go into the system data folder. So we need to go back out to the root directory and then go into system data. And from there, we just go into the PRIV folder, then the cache folder, then the profile folder, and then again these folders represent your different profiles. So I'm going to go into this one because it's the only profile I have, and then where you see version.json, that's where you put your avatar, your pictures that you want to replace. So I've got obviously my YouTube banner here, or my YouTube avatar picture. So you've got 5 different picture files here. So you've got 5 different profile images here. One is a PNG file that's 440 pixels by 440. You've got a 64 pixel version, so 64 by 64, and it needs to be called avatar64.dds, and it needs to be a DDS file, which is a direct draw surface image. And then you've also got, the same for this one, but it's 128 pixels. This one's 260 pixels, and this one is 440 pixels, all in direct draw surface format. And again, they need to be named correctly. So 64 for the 64 one, 128 for the 128 one, and so on. So name them exactly like this with whatever images you want. Make sure they're the correct size and format, and then you can copy them in here, and that will replace them on the PS5. And again, if we go back to the PS5 and we hit the PS button, well, you can see there it's already changed. So there's the image changed right there. I can go to home. We'll see if it's changed and some of the other locations that you'll see your profile in. So you can see up there that has indeed changed. Let's view profile. And yep, you can see there in the top left, it's changed the image too. And yeah, pretty awesome stuff. It's changed there as well. I don't know what's up with the weird overlapping text there. That happened when I first ran Spectre's exploit and it's never corrected itself. But yeah, let's head back into the disk player so that we can once again go back to FTP. So another interesting thing is if you go into the dev folder and you scroll down in the dev folder, you will find your S/0, which is the firmware for your NOR chip, which is part of what's required to do the revert method on the PS4 to revert to an older firmware. So it might be worthwhile just backing this up just in case a method like that ever comes out for the PS5. So you can see, even though it does show up as 0 in terms of file size, it is actually, it has copied the file out properly. It's 2 megabytes. So yeah, it might be a good idea just to back that up from the PS5. So another thing you can mess around with in the system data is you can also mess around with the database files. So if you go into system data and you go into the PRIV folder, and then you go into MMS, and then in here, you can see that you've got all of your database files, including your app database. So we can copy that out. So app.db. You've even got the notifications database as well, which is what people edit on the PS4 to create those permanent notification shortcuts that can launch the debug settings and other things from your notifications. That's all done by editing the notifications database. So you've got your notifications database. I don't know if it's the regular one or the one number 2, but one of those databases will probably allow you to do that. But the app database allows you to basically hide and show apps on the home screen. So to open these database files, you need a SQL database browser. So I'm using DB browser for SQLite, which again, I'll put in the description. So this software will allow you to open the database files here. So we can go into browse data, and then we can select content info, I believe it is. Actually, no, it's not content info. I think it's table info. No, not table info. Icon info. There we go. So icon info. If you go into icon info, you can see here that you actually have a column. Now, I think you can actually rename them, potentially, the games on your home screen. So you can call it something else potentially by editing this. But another thing that you can do is you can hide and show apps. So if we head along here, you've got a visible column right here. So with visible, this allows you to change what's visible and what's not. So you can see I actually did set earlier on, I set PT to be invisible. So PT is not currently showing up on my home screen, even though it is installed. I can do the same with another thing. So let's take Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart here, which is on column 7. And we'll head on to the visible column and we'll change that to 0 to make it invisible. And then we will write changes, close the database, and then we can copy that back over. I would make a backup of the database file though, just in case you corrupt anything here. And then we'll swap that over and go back to our home screen. Okay, so if I go to my games here, you can see it's gone. Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart. It's still installed, but it's not showing up here. So you can hide and show apps just like you can on the PS4. If we head back once again to the disc player, I'll go back onto FTP because I would rather show those games. Okay, so I'm going to change PT to 1 and number 7, which is Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart, I'll change to 1. There's also a bunch of other stuff on here that's set to invisible. So let's change all of this to be visible and see what else we actually have here. Some of this system stuff that's all currently set to be invisible. And we'll just change it all to visible to see what we've actually got here. So we'll change everything to visible and then we'll go ahead and write changes and close database. And then we'll copy the database back over. Head back over here. And here we go. So, wow, you can see there's quite a lot of stuff here. We've got music home that wasn't there before. TV and video. So a few more media apps here showing up. And then if we go to games, hey, look at this. So there we go. We've got our PT back. We've got Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart's back. We also have Explorer, whatever that is. And yeah, media gallery. I don't think that was there before. PlayStation Now, PlayStation Plus, Remote Play, Share Play, and Game Library. I think Game Library was already there. Remote Play might have already been there. I'm not sure. But you can see there's a lot more apps now showing up. So you can hide and show apps. You can also make apps installable or uninstallable. Also, if you go into Content Info, you can also change the installable tab as well, or the installable section. There you go, uninstallable. So that's all set to 0, which means it's not uninstallable. But of course, the games are set to 1, so you can uninstall games. But if you wanted to, stop yourself from accidentally uninstalling a game, you could change that to a 0, stop it from being uninstalled. Or if you want to be able to uninstall some of these system apps that you normally can't uninstall, then you can just set the uninstallable flag to 1, which will then allow you to uninstall those system apps, which again, maybe not recommended to do that at this stage, but that's something you can do as well by editing the data files or the database files. So that's pretty much everything that I've found so far with PS5 FTP. Of course, you can also go into the MNT folder, access your USB drives from here. There's the disk folder so that you can actually access the files on the current Blu-ray disc that's running, as well as the sandbox directory, which shows any app that's actively running. So yeah, that's pretty much everything I've got for you guys here. You can access your package files, your icons, your background images. You can replace them. You can edit your trophy summary. You can access your encrypted save files for your games. You can also access your game update packages. You can block system updates with the update folder. You can edit your database files for your notifications to create links to open other settings and stuff, as well as, of course, editing the app database to make apps invisible or visible or uninstallable or not. And of course, you can also back up your NOR flash and change your profile image. And yeah, a bunch of other stuff as well. I'm sure more will be found, but I think that's enough for one video. So hope you guys enjoyed this video or found the information, I don't know, interesting or useful. If you did, please leave a like and subscribe, and I'll hopefully see you guys in the next one.